2024 Governor's Workforce Development Summit. Thank you so much for joining us. If you were here all 3 days, fantastic. 2 days, great. 1 day, that's fine too. We are really excited. This topic here, I think the more time I spend in the territory, the more I learn about the potential of this sector of maritime industry. And I think our panelists, along with the Honorable Lieutenant Governor, will be able to give us some great insight into where we are and where we could be somewhere down the road. So join us for this final session. Lieutenant Governor, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And good afternoon as well to those in the listening and viewing audiences. So our topic, navigating the future, opportunities and challenges in the marine industry and the blue economy. And if you, on your agenda, you see we were to be joined by Miss Cheryl Boynes-Jackson. None of these gentlemen up here look like Cheryl Boynes-Jackson, right? Well, actually, he looks a little bit like, since it's her brother, he looks a little. So we have a substitution. We're going to have a great conversation with Mr. James Boynes, president of Boynes Shipping, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about his work. And we're going to have Mr. Angelo Raimondi, harbor pilot of the Port Authority, who joined us in the opening session. So for those who are just joining, we'll start with Mr. Boynes. Could you tell us a little about yourself for the audience?
Good day. My name is James Boynes, James Boynes Sr. Let's start with marine industry. I'm the third generation of captains. Been a captain now for 42 years. And the ferry dock down where we operate off every day, that's the first generation, Mr. Larry Boynes. That's my grandfather. That's where we all grew up, played, run up and down the beach right down here, and learned everything about the marine industry, everything that we know today, from celestial navigation to finding fishes. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's been interesting, an interesting life. And yeah, we need to talk about where we're going in the future. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boynes. You must have found a fountain of youth or something, because you don't even look like 42, right? You've been doing it for 42 years. I'm telling you, this Boynes family got something going on. So, thank you for that. Mr. Raimondi, you gave us a little bit of an intro earlier, but some people may have just joined us. So if you could just share a little as well.
Good morning again. My name is Angelo Raimondi. I'm currently employed with the Virgin Islands Port Authority as a harbor pilot. We're in charge of the safe navigation of all major vessels in and out of the St. Thomas, Charlotte, and Amalie Harbor, the WAPA ships, the cruise ships, the cargoes, the major yachts. We work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Pandemic or not, everything arrives by vessel, and their pilot needs to be on board to bring them in and out safely. I'm originally from Coral Bay. I grew up out in the south and east end of Coral Bay, learned to swim in Hanson Bay, and started with the CATS program when I was 6 years old, sailed competitively my entire childhood, representing the Virgin Islands all over the world in many competitions, from local St. Thomas regattas to world championships, national championships. I ended up working for Varlock Ventures on the ferry when I was 15 years old. That's kind of what started my professional maritime career, due to a lot of the mentorships from the older generation, the captains and the crews that I worked with, to pursue something in the maritime field. From there, I went to Texas Maritime University, got a third mate unlimited, and then I worked in the oil field all the way up to master unlimited, from 2004 until 2017 when
Good.
I returned home.
Great. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. I wanted to speak first to young people who might be visiting, who might be viewing. We don't have many in the audience. I think they're probably in school. But for a young person who might look at this program at a future time, What would you say to a young person interested in the sea and in a career such as yours, but maybe are not quite seeing how to get there? Mr. Boynes, we'll start with you.
Well, the first thing I would say is we need to really want to do what we're talking about when it comes to the sea. I was listening a little while ago about from the workforce before. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to transportation, you can't just want a job. You need to be a part of what you're trying to do. You need, if you're going to work on the ocean, you have to have like what we call your sea legs. You need to be an ocean person instead of just wanting that. So make sure that's in you and that's what you really want to do. And, you know, it works that way. It flows a lot better that way.
Thank you. Raimondi?
I fully agree. If you want to pursue a career in the maritime industry, you are a man or woman of the sea. That defines your lifestyle, your personality. It is not, sometimes it's not a nice place to be. The sea, the ocean, it's dangerous. You need to have your wits about you. And as Captain Boyne says, if you see legs, you better have 3 legs because one for you, one for the boat. It's a lifestyle that is not for everybody. It's very lucrative. It's great if you want to explore the world and see all over and get paid for it. Maybe not as much as back in the day because of the efficiency of shipping. Tramp ships used to go all over the world and you'd stay in port for days and days on end. Now it's all about that bottom dollar. But the experience is there. And one of the biggest takeaways from a career in the maritime field is your opportunities are endless. Because when you're out at sea, when you're on a ship, you can only depend on you and the crew around you. You all must know how to do everything. You can't just pick up the phone and have a repair guy come through. Some days you're weeks and weeks out at sea, and if you're stuck, you are responsible for your own safety.
So, and thank you for that. So, I have traveled a lot of the Caribbean. I mean, as far down as the ABC Islands, Trinidad, St. Kitts, St. Martin, St. Vincent, Grenada. And so we're in a very competitive sphere in the Caribbean because we have a lot of pristine areas everywhere, we have beauty everywhere. What do you think are the benefits, the particular advantages of where we live, the Virgin Islands, with regard to the marine industry and creating a marine economy?
Well, we are U.S., which means we are the last exit and entry, beginning and end, for the entire Caribbean. Okay, so we are basically the mother port. Everything comes through here before it goes into the Eastern Caribbean, or most things, that is. We have that. I think it's an advantage because everything that's coming from stateside is coming through here. We have to go through the ports. We have to deal with the opportunities of becoming harbor pilots, captains, getting the vessels in and out. And the harbors are tough. So you really learn the level of the level of captain that you are in comparison to some of the other places. To tell you something or to say this, I have met captains that's going towards the Eastern Caribbean, and this is not a joke, that does not know how to navigate and actually sits out there and wait until a vessel is going that direction and follow it. As U.S. captains, not happening. We actually know what we're doing.
Great.
Okay?
Same question.
I think it's kind of a multi-layered answer here. Due to our location and some of the advantages that allows us, a majority of the cargo throughout the BVI, the USVI, St. Martin, all come through the St. Thomas port. We do not have to abide by the Jones Act, which requires American flag ships to ship between American flag ports. So that should offer some sort of cost savings to us because it is cheaper to hire foreign flag ship with foreign flag crews. Sometimes that doesn't always translate into our pocketbooks, but one of the issues that we face around here is we have foreign captains, as Captain Boyne says. U.S. Coast Guard licensed captains are the pinnacle. We are trained better, we are more thorough with all of our certificates, and we have a long-standing better record. The local Virgin Island community is very behind in terms of the maritime field. Yes, we have a lot of captains, we have a lot of boats around here, but we don't have the vocational programs from a young age to promote that, the younger generation to continue on. We also don't have a lot of the support from some of the congressional side with the BVI for reciprocity between back and forth. They can bring charters here and taxis here. They don't pay any taxes on any of the money that they're making, but we can't bring people up there. The private charter industry, how many local Virgin Islanders own charter companies down here comparatively to stateside that have moved down here? Very, very little. And that's all because we are lacking behind on the training and the support system and encouraging our younger generation to go out and seek these jobs and open up the opportunities. The BVI has plenty of local captains and local charter companies. That's another thing that we're lacking here.
And that's a very important point because I was going to lead right into that because you often hear that as close as the BVI is to us, they have been more successful in having the marine industry integrated into the local population. Now, they have a whole different status vis-a-vis the UK. They have a constitution different from the Virgin Islands not having one with regard to the US. But is the major difference, you think, the opportunities being made to young people to get into the industry from a young age in the BVI differently to us and the integration into their education programs as well? Is that a major difference?
I believe in the BVI, they have tenfold better marine support in general. The boating community, commercial and private, is supported tremendously more than here. The marinas, the mooring systems, the availability for commercial docks and maintenance facilities for private and commercial, we lack all of that here. The local youth are engaged from young ages working in marinas, working in the maintenance yards, working with the guests coming on and off the boats, getting them to and from the charter, the provisioning side, the logistics side. And we lack a lot of that here because we don't have the same marine industry. We have the ability to do it, we just don't have it.
Right, I agree. The Coast Guard requires you to do an STCW training course in order to be employed on these vessels and stuff like that. The problem I have with that, it's one time. So, for example, when I was hauling all the fuel out of Hovenza and stuff like that, we had to go to a training course every 6 months. Mm-hmm. I think that should be a little more the standard where the maritime industry is concerned, where the employees of the ferry boats, the charter boats, all the vessels be on a more of a 6-month training course to keep them, up to speed with,
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about the federal regulations that provide a challenge. Oh, bless you, sorry. That provide a challenge for the industry and local inefficiencies as well. If we could focus on the local, which are within our control, if there were 2 things that you would change that you believe would promote the industry here better, would facilitate better access to a blue economy, What suggestions would you make to our local government about things that we could change or we could improve? I think the federal one, we got to lobby and do some other things, but I'm more interested in the fixes that we can do on a local level. So if you had to suggest, based on your experience, what are some of the things that you would prioritize in terms of changing or adding? Any? In other words, how could we fix it over the things that we control?
Well, like I said before, I think we need a little more training.
Training.
Training, I think, will incite a little more technology. As it is, the vessels are stepping up a little bit in technology, which is a good thing. But I think they're lacking training. We tend to fall back into the trend of just hiring somebody, basic training, and throw them into the, onto the battlefield, and that needs to change. It needs to be a little more consistent with the training. I think we need to apply the same. When we all leave from here, go to the airport, get on a plane, we expect a certain level. Well, the plane is actually the same thing as a boat. The same way you're going to fall out of the sky and crash is the same way you're going to sink to the bottom of the ocean and drown. So you need to apply the same standards. And I think that would, I think what it would do is incite, if we can see more professionalism in the industry, I think it would incite more to come into it.
Thank you.
I think the younger generation coming up needs more opportunity to be involved in the boating community from a very young age. More vocational programs. Again, I'm going to refer back to the CATS program that was in Coral Bay. Unfortunately, it's not what it is today, what it was back in the day. We had 4 different beaches. We had 30 or 40 boats out every day, and it's kind of limited to space. They don't have space to run these type of programs. It was all donations back in the day. People would donate boats. People would donate, access to the beach. Now all that has been closed off. The older generation mentorship as well. The biggest reason that I'm where I am at today is because the older generation saw that I was interested. They took their experience and their regrets and pushed it on me. They were there to make sure that I kept going, and I feel the generation that is the captains now don't have that same investment into the youth like my older generation had. Multiple captains that I worked with on the ferry told me, if I could do it all over again, this is what I would do, and you need to go do that. And they pushed me and pushed me and pushed me and made sure that I was following that route, and I just don't feel that there's the follow-up that they had.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. There's as I think about our tourism economy, the marine industry plays into tourism, and it just plays into our way of life. I mean, we need transportation. There's fishing for food. I was at the Caribbean fisheries meeting recently, and I learned we harvest like 1 million pounds of fish a year, and that most of it, if not all, is consumed locally. How do we? Do you think there's any tension between the engagement of the marine industry with regard to our livelihood and our way of life versus prioritizing it from a tourism standpoint? Is there a tension there, a balance there that we can achieve, or are we out of kilter anywhere there? Should we focus more on a marine economy that supports locals or that attracts people to the territory? I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
I think that we should focus a little more on between the not so much on the tourism. I think we got the tourism. I think we need to work on the local stuff. For example, when we're talking about the fisheries, I think we need a little more of that manufacturing for our own foods, especially foods with less chemicals and stuff like that. I think we need to push that a little more, create more farms, fish farms. There's a lot of that throughout the world, and it's not a lot of that here. I think we need to push that a little more so that we could stimulate our economy that way some more.
Interestingly enough, and I'm going to come to you, Mr. Raimondi. Interestingly enough, once upon a time, we had like the best aquaculture program at our university. I mean, people were coming here from Europe, South America, the other parts of the Caribbean, to learn the same aquaculture, fish farming techniques that you spoke about. And somewhere along the line, that disappeared. I can't tell you how, I can't tell you why. But you make a good point for us focusing on return, because we have to feed ourselves as well.
Yes.
I think in terms of the fishing standpoint, the fishing community is very, not nepotistic, but it's handed down through generation to generation to generation. And I know a lot of the kids that grew up with me that are taking over their parents' business in the fishing, and you have to be a dedicated person to be in the commercial fishing industry down here. And I do not think they get enough credit for what they do and how often they do it and what they have to go through. Another issue is just climate change with the acidity in the water. The fishing is just not what it used to be. The lack of fads on the drops with the fish attraction devices. Was supposed to be 3 offshore on the north side and 1 on the south side. They're not there anymore. They haven't been replaced due to funding. But this fishing aspect not only would benefit local community, but the tourism aspect, because St. Thomas is one of the best blue marlin fisheries in the world. People come here to catch record fish. And without these fish attraction devices and support for the local fishing community, you're not going to get those same big spenders that come and spend their money down here buying fuel, provisioning, villas, tackle, everything. It trickles down. So I think we need to invest into that dimension of the fish attraction. And I believe the BVI just opened up a lobster farm that they're starting to do up there.
About that.
And
Yes.
you know, we don't really invest in any of that stuff here.
We need to get into more of that. Yeah.
I'm glad that you touched on climate change, because that was one of the areas that I wanted to pull into the discussion. For a lot of people, it's just 2 words. People who are not seeing the erosion in coastlines. We had programs at the university where we talked about the rising sea temperatures and increasing occurrences of ciguatera and other kinds of fish poisoning. From your point of view, I think some of us need visual, some of us need to actually see that this is something happening and just not a phrase. What are you actually seeing out there that speaks to climate change from your perspective?
I can say in the past 2 years, I have never seen weather out of the south and the west as often as I have in the last 2 years. The southern winds that come are obviously hotter than the northern winds, but we have never had such big windows of southern weather that our ports just aren't used to, number one. It's blowing up the warmer air, the warmer water. It's creating more stronger hurricanes, which we're all seeing. In the fishing side, fish just don't get as big. They're not as plentiful. You pull up lobsters from the bottom, the shells aren't nearly as hard as they used to be. There's so much, the conchs, you have to be a waterman to understand this and experience it. And you can show pictures, you can explain it, but until you've actually seen the trend over your lifetime, it doesn't hit as hard.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the same here. I can definitely see the difference in the weather. And I'm not just talking about the weather from the hurricane standpoint, actually the weather from traveling in a vessel, the difference in the waves from what it used to be. I remember being taught that the ocean breathes. So they would always say, remember the seventh wave. Okay? It may sound a little strange to most people, but remember the seventh wave. So you have to count from wave one, which is almost impossible, to the seventh one, and that's the way the ocean breathes. And today it's kind of hard to get it done because of how the climate has changed, how the weathers have changed. So it's hard. It's a lot tougher than what it used to be.
So in line with that, do you see us as being responsible stewards of our territorial environment? Are there things that we are doing that are contributing that we could control as a community?
Well, we definitely have to do our part. I think we've been starting. The Coast Guard been pressing the issue about the tier, where the engines for the vessels are concerned, to keep them at tier 1 or tier 2, depending on the vessels, which keeps the carbon footprint down. The new vessels that's coming, on our side, we're trying to push them a little more green, more into electric motors and stuff like that. So we've been doing the best we can. I mean, around the islands, you can see more solar panels and stuff like that's going up. Of course, you have the expense of that and stuff like that, but you just have to keep pushing forward.
I think overall, on a world standpoint, we're doing fairly well. But there is always room for improvement, and the watershed issues with the islands, with all the building, the runoff, the waste management issues. For example, in town for the last 2 months, I understand it's a capital issue and tearing up the streets and stuff, but there's always room for improvement, and I think in order for the betterment and the longevity of the islands, we need to concentrate on how we can preserve what we have left.
Thank you. We've had in all of these discussions that we've been having a focus on the workplace and how it's changing, technology and how it's changing the workforce. And we had the conversation about autonomous sea vessels as well. What are the challenges that you see in balancing or even thinking about the changes in your industry brought on by technology and the change in the workforce of today? Any thoughts on that?
I think with the autonomous ships and the remote control aspect, remote operations, there is room for it in the industry, but it's not a replacement. The connectivity between ship and shore, data logging, the oversight it's always better to have more eyes on it, but we need to keep in mind that there shouldn't be too much where it becomes micromanaging and you aren't actually able to look out the window. One of the biggest things when you sail and you ship, you look out the window. Most people, they just stare at the radar all day, or they just stare at the screen all day. They don't look out the window. You have all these windows on a ship, and in my experience in the oil field, a captain is no longer a captain anymore. He's an administrator. He is an office worker on a ship. He doesn't stand a watch on the bridge. He doesn't go out and do maintenance. He's literally doing emails and paperwork all day. And with shoreside operations being involved, until they start taking some of that workload off, it's just going to be an administrative role. So I think with autonomous shipping and the remote operations side, will take some precedent over that aspect of it, but it won't replace it. But we need to expect the change.
Okay. Any thoughts?
I agree. Definitely won't replace it. By law, you have to have a lookout. You have a captain on a vessel, and besides the captain, you also have to have a lookout. So being autonomous, even if you have a vessel on autopilot, you still have to have a lookout. The problem is there's millions of vessels on the ocean, and your vessel that's on autopilot, the other vessel is not. So somebody needs to be looking out to move out of the way. So it's not a replacement.
So we continue to train the human element even with the autonomous.
We can't replace that.
I want to close out my questions and allow the audience to participate. But I wanted to go back to the beginning. And in the beginning, you spoke about the sea, and that this is it requires a special person to do the work that we're talking about, and that there's danger in the sea as well. And I think for us to encourage young people to have a greater local participation in the industry, we have to look at our relationship with the sea. Many of us don't even know that our university has a master's in marine sciences. And when you go to the university and you engage any of the students, usually they're from away. They've come to us to study. And we have maybe one local person in the program sometimes none.
Right.
How do we think about that relationship to the sea and having young people have a more embracing approach that would allow for their expanded participation in the marine economy? What do you think?
I think there just needs to be more engagement and more opportunity for them to become engaged. The more internships available that aren't just for college credit time or something that they're actually interested in, and have people who are involved mentoring these internships invested in wanting people to stay and have more interest in it.
Yeah, I think we need to figure out how to involve the youths a little more. From a younger age, we need to get involved from a younger age. I remember being in Anguilla, and when you look out on the harbor, there's almost hundreds of small miniature sailboats where the little children are starting to learn to sail from a very early age, and that, would help them through.
Okay, great. Thank you so very much for your thoughtful responses. And now, are there any questions from the audience? We see one hand. Oh, we see two.
Yes. So good afternoon. So a lot of what you talked about today is individuals being interested in the marine industry, but maybe not at as high a professional level as could happen. So we know that there are fishing communities in Frenchtown and in St. Croix. A lot of the Hispanic community has been traditional fishers for many generations. How do we encourage, or what are some of the things that we could do to be able to, I don't want to say professionalize because they're professionals, but how do we raise the bar? What programs could we do to raise the bar so they could be more advanced and they could more embrace some of the higher level skills that you guys were mentioning?
I think some more programs, private programs, need to be supported more by the government with their support for the facilities to have it. Again, I'll go back to the CATS program because that was it. So CATS program is Kids in the Sea. It was a program for kids to learn seamanship, boat safety. You start with when you're about 7 years old, and you start with rowing. You learn to swim, you learn to tie knots, you learn water survival if the boat capsizes. Then you can work your way into sailing, and they teach you how to sail. And then if you get competitive, you can go to the competitive route. But you learn about everything, the boats, the environment, the safety aspect of it, survival at sea, how your impact with the boat affects the impact of the environment, the environmental consciousness of it. We don't have any of those programs anymore. I remember as I was a kid in Coral Bay, we would go every Saturday, And every kid in Coral Bay knew about the CATS program. They were all free to go to the CATS program. Kids would come from Cruise Bay to go to CATS. Now, very, very rare. And they have a yacht club that they started in Cruise Bay to teach kids how to sail. They don't have anywhere to store the boats. It's right on the shore. So it's at the mercy of the private sector to provide them the facility to do that. If you go to any other Caribbean island, Antigua, the Bahamas, they have a tradition of sailing and shipwrights, building ships. It's not just the operation of the marine industry of driving boats and navigating. You have to fix boats, you have to build boats, you have to provision boats. The marine industry has so many different avenues that you can take off on.
Thank you. And our administrator?
This is a constituent question on a constituent hat this time. So you talk about technology that's out there. We talk about AI that is coming in and stuff like that. But the one thing to appreciate with technology is that on St. John, the guys, you guys have to sometimes take the boats all the way to New Orleans for service because we don't necessarily have that service here within the territory. And not so long ago, I'm a captain's wife, just want to put that out there. My husband and a crew that was actually made up of captains. Because like you said, with the new thing that's coming out now, the captain is doing emails, he's checking messages, he's not necessarily vesseling that ship. But here in the territory, I would like to brag and boast and say that we still do that.
Right.
So the boat was staffed by mostly captains than crew because we're talking about days, a week or 2 weeks out. They're trying to maneuver a boat from St. John all the way to New Orleans and then back. That's a long time. So you need numerous people with numerous skills to continue that vessel safely to and from. The one thing that I love about technology is that I was introduced, because my husband does that back and forth, of an app. I didn't realize there was so much vessels out there at the same time. You guys got to download that app. It is crazy. And like you said, you cannot be just looking at a machine in front of you. Somebody have to be looking out because you may never know where another ship is. And even in that app, you know where a submarine is. I mean, it's wild. It's exciting. I was able to track my husband and the crew to and from everywhere they went. I could just go on my phone, the app would give me a notification to let me know where that vessel is, what the name of that vessel is, and where that vessel came from and going to. It's amazing. You guys should really download it if you're into the marine industry. Thank you for that information.
Thank you, Shakima. And I just wanted to add the question that Nisha raised. Having support for fishermen, fisherwomen, to move into a more professional place. And we had that issue raised during COVID, when we had the PPP programs. We have grants that are available to farmers and to fishermen. And in the case of the PPP, my office actually assisted small businesses like fishermen and farmers to complete those applications. And I think the support of, for instance, the EDC program with the incubation program, so much support, we can increase that to allow that to happen. I think we have one last question from our workforce development.
Yep, question, and this goes to what Angelo was mentioning earlier. I think you said it was the CAPS program? CATS program?
KATS.
CATS,
Kids
gotcha.
on the Sea.
So one of the things that stands out to me with what that program did is make youngsters comfortable with the sea. So before we could even encourage them to seek careers in the sea, they have to be comfortable with it. They did not see it as a threat. Is it possible, or do we think we can bake in some of these programs into the educational system right now? Because do we have swimming classes? So that could be something that we could expand on, getting them more comfortable with the sea from a junior high or even elementary level, So then when these opportunities or encouragement comes along, they could see it as a reality.
Thank you for that. Commissioner?
Yes, I just want to add a couple things because VI Professional Charters, they are a registered apprenticeship program and they're doing some of the same things at the CAPS program. I know that they have, it's not as big, it's not as large, and so we're working with them to make it a lot larger. They had a very good operation on St. Thomas and they're expanding to St. Croix, so I got to talk to them about making sure that we get St. John in the loop as well. And also as for the fishermen, I know that Commissioner Peterson at Agriculture is working on an entire program that to get the fishermen in, because again, to get them not more professional, but to get them to understand that they're in business, right, Chair McCarty? Because the business end of it, they love the sea, they're going out there and doing that, and they're not necessarily doing the paperwork, doing the tracking to be able to get the loans and to get the sustainability and the support that they need. So we need to make sure that those real seamen, as you talk about, are put in mentorship programs to be able to give back to the young people. So again, I just want to let you know that we're on it. Department of Labor is working very closely with the marine industry, and we're working and from the standpoint of apprenticeship program. So there's a very lucrative opportunity to be able to get into this all facets of the marine industry.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't want to give my back to anybody. We covered all the questions from the audience. If so, we really want to thank you for your participation. We want to thank you, Mr. Boynes and Mr. Raimondi, for sharing with us this afternoon. The question, Mr. Carty, when I'm going to date myself again. We actually had a pool that we had down across from the Lucinda Millen home, and we used to come down from CAHS for our swimming classes at the pool. And I think there was one in Nazareth as well. So I tell people about this pool, and they're like, well, you must have been here 100 years ago. I say, yeah, there was a pool. There was a pool across from Lucinda Millen where the steel, exactly, yeah. So we want to thank you, and I think we're going to turn it back for our closing of the program.
Very good. Thank you. A round of applause for Lieutenant Governor and our panelists.